Hey, good afternoon. How's everybody today? Well, doing good. Welcome to the 39th CALLERLAB convention here in Nashville, Tennessee. This is the 3rd of April, and you are here to listen to, for the next hour and 15 minutes, vocal techniques. And my name is Tim Marriner, and I'm your moderator. And we have two other panelists that are with me, and Mr. Paul Henze, up front to my right. Let's give him a nice hand. Yeah. And Mr. Ron Markus on my left. Now, this particular session for many years has been something that Dr. Arden Hopkin has been covering for quite a while for our organization, and we're very blessed that of his capabilities and all of his work that he was able to provide our group as an organization, and we appreciate that. So we have big shoes to fill, and we have 3 accredited collar coaches here in front of you to be able to help in that support and that effort. So if you have questions or anything along those lines, we're going to work on those and be glad to help with that. Tom, do you mind helping passing these around a little bit? That'd be very helpful. Thank you, Tom. This session is being recorded, so if you do have questions along the way, as we do on occasion, please state your name, where you're from, and then ask your question over the microphone so that we don't have dead space. And when you get those MP3s, then you know of the answer and the question and everything that goes on to what the question is. Nothing like hearing an answer to you have no idea what the question was. So we appreciate your efforts in helping with that. With that, we kind of broke the topic up into 3 categories. We have the vocal mechanics, the vocal maintenance, and then the vocal techniques. And so we're going to take those 3 areas, each of us, and cover those topics. And along the way, we'll have some time at the very end with Q&A, but I think we might have some time along the way, too, if you have some questions on that one particular item, just to raise a hand. We have a wireless here to be able to get them back out to you, okay? Right. Oop, there's a flip-flop of that. Excellent. So to get things started, then we'll turn this over to Ron Markus, who is going to kind of discuss first the vocal mechanics.
Instead of getting wires crossed over each other here. All right. Again, we have some super-sized shoes. We're all wearing size 10. It's about a size 15 shoe we're trying to fit here to fill with Dr. Hopkins being gone. But I thought I might start off with if you take your hand out and look at we talk about vocal cords, we talk about voice, we talk about windpipes and all this sort of thing, where the wind comes from and lungs and whatnot. So toward the tail end of the handout, about the 4th piece of paper back, it's or so, it says vocal cord anatomy. I want to just kind of go over that just a little bit because we talk about vocal cords and we talk about all these use of the voice and windpipe and breathing and lungs and so forth. The question is, where are these things? That's what I thought. Okay, we've got them. Where are they? As it says in there, it's the real name of the whole thing is larynx. It's called your Adam's apple is called the laryngeal prominence. Very, very important. Sounds very important anyhow. It's just a big lump in your throat there. Men's are larger, women's are a little smaller, and they're inside of that. In that bump, the laryngeal prominence is where your vocal cords are. And as it says in the handout there, the vocal cords are composed of twin infoldings of membranes that stretch horizontally across the larynx. So they're in your windpipe. So that's when, as the wind and the air comes out of your lungs, it passes over these. Men and women have different sizes. Men's are about 3/4 to an inch long, and ladies are maybe 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch long. And of course, the difference in size is partially the reason why men sound one way and ladies sound differently. So that's just a little snapshot of there's more in those 2 or 3 paragraphs there about the vocal cord anatomy, but it's just a little snapshot of where they are, and so you can have an idea when people talk about vocal cords where they are in your body. Back to the first page then of the handout there. We talk about what is the thing in your throat that everybody talks about. You use to communicate. They're your vocal cords, and as I said, they're the larynx. Their official word is larynx, and they are on either side of your trachea, just stretched horizontally across the windpipe, which is, of course, as you breathe, the wind comes out, it makes sound, and if you have your mouth open, which we all should do, it'll come out. You can talk, and I see this a lot on TV shows anymore. People don't open their mouth when they talk. You get this, I don't know what you want to do, and I guess they figure the microphone is going to pick it up, but it's difficult to understand sometimes, because it seems to be a trend in actors nowadays to hardly move their lips at all when they speak. But your lips are very, very important to actually making sounds. You use your tongue, your mouth, and nasal passages, and just like a violin. If you have a violin cord, it's a small cord, it's stretched very tight, it'll make a high-pitched sound. The same way with vocal cords. If you stretch them very tight, by producing a higher-pitched sound, or to produce a higher-pitched sound, the cords will be stretched tightly. And if like again on a violin or a guitar string, they work that same way too. If they're not stretched very tightly, then you'll get a lower sound, a lower pitched sound. And of course we go into calling and your voice in calling. I think the very first paragraph, right under the headings here, it sort of tells it all. Calling requires clarity, good diction, and projection. Clarity, of course, is clearness. When something is said, it can be heard and understood clearly. Diction is the way you say it, so that it is clear and understood. And of course, projection is something that you produce with air as it comes from your lungs up past the vocal cords and coming out. Generally, if you want to project, how many of you have kids? How many of you have raised children? Okay. When little Johnny or little Jean is doing something they shouldn't do, it's Johnny. It's not loud, but it's projected. And Johnny gets the idea. Or Janie. They'll get the idea because you're using your voice, what's called the kind of the command component of your voice, and you're projecting what you want to say. Rather than saying, let me get rid of this. Rather than saying, Johnny, because that's not as commanding as Johnny. And that's the difference between loudness and projection. We don't have to worry too much about loudness these days because we have these marvelous pieces of equipment here that provide all the loudness we need and generally a lot of the help in tone and that sort of thing. Diction and clarity come into things like words that we say that people may take one way or the other, and that's where you have to be very cautious about what you say. For instance, var and star. You have to be really cautious about getting those words correct. Let's and left. Anybody here cue rounds? When you cue rounds, you really have to be very clear to say left turning two-step or left facing whatever it is, or in saying right turning two steps or right turning waltzes, this kind of thing. You want people to turn the right way, so you have to be very clear about it. And square dance callers should do the same thing. If you want them to do a left square through, then make sure you say left. When all the letters of the word come out. That's the clarity we're talking about and the diction. And you can try to you make sure that you're differentiating between these words by simply saying them to yourself. When you say var, make sure it sounds like var. When you say star or men's or left or right, make sure it sounds like left or right. How many of you heard callers, and maybe yourself, and I probably have done it myself, rotten left through. Well, there's a T on the end of both of those words. And again, if you go back to round dance gear, you better say right or left if you want something to do, something to go to the right or the left. And the same with square dancing. You can get away with, it's a cutesy kind of thing you can do every now and then. You can say right and left through. But I think if you get into the habit of doing that, then you're practicing poor diction and not, you're not calling clearly that people will be able to understand you properly. Read into a microphone, onto a tape recorder, and let's see what you sound like. And of course, you're going to sound differently. I'll cover that a little bit later on as to what's going on there. Vocal projection, as I said, means putting your voice out there so that people can hear you, with or without a microphone. We probably should be able to discuss this topic with a group as small as this. We have about maybe 30 people here total, 25 or 30 people totally, without microphones or without the use of any kind of electronic equipment. But it's going on a tape, so it's just easier to do it this way. And I think if you practice that, I want to talk to a group, practice saying you want to make believe if you've got 25 or 30 people you could talk to, that's fine. If you don't have it, then saying, well, if I had 25 or 30 people that were out there, how would I have to use my voice differently? Of course, you need to be able to, even though you have a microphone to help with the loudness and the amplification of your voice, you don't necessarily have to have that same projection has to be there. With or without the mic, projection has to be there, and of course you have to hold the mic in the right place. The old down here doesn't quite work. It's much better if it's squared right in front of you, so that you're talking directly into the end of it rather than over the top of it, as the way mics they used to be set up that way. Let's see, go on to the next page. I talk about this loudness and projection. They're not really the same. Loudness is simply a matter of getting more air into your lungs and using more air as opposed to less air, and you'll get a louder sound. So if you breathe in and you want to say hello, but if you breathe in and you use a little bit more air, it'll come out hello. Now, it's not projected anymore, but there's a little more air that came through past the vocal cords that gave you that higher sound, or the louder sound. Projection is like we talked about before. Projection is using men tend to go a little lower into the chest for projection, and women tend to go a little bit more up into the nasal cavities and into the head to use those areas for projection. It's just simply the way a man's voice is built and the way a woman's voice is built. That's just the way they are. And as I said before, in all cases, whether you're concerned with the loudness or the projection, the diction, the clarity, the enunciation, whatever term you're concerned with, open your mouth. Please, get the word out there, because if you can, all the diction and clarity and projection in the world is not going to work if your mouth isn't open. And it sounds like a silly thing to say. Of course, my mouth has to be open when I talk, but not necessarily. As you will, I'm sure you've all talked to people who just don't open their mouth very much when they talk. Everything is sort of like this, and the lips barely move. I think, how do you make vowels and make sounds, without moving your lips and just opening your mouth and getting the breath to come up past your vocal cords and out? But they get away with it somehow. But if you just take a minute and think about it, say A. And notice where your mouth is and where your teeth are and your lips are, and say E, and you'll see that your mouth is and your tongue are shaped differently. You say D, and as you see, the tongue comes a little bit further forward. So each letter requires a different use of your mouth, but in all cases, your mouth had to be open. No matter what you did with your lips and tongue, your mouth had to be open. So that's the point there. Make sure you get it done. Get your mouth open and so people can hear what you're saying. You don't have they don't have a prayer if your mouth isn't open, because the air can't come through. It's got nowhere to go. It gets up that far and that's it. You shut the valve off. Breathing. How do we get the air in there in the first place? And I guess, how many of you heard about this? You've been to these voice seminars and voice sessions like with Dr. Hopkins in the past? Belly breathing or tummy breathing, whatever you want to call it. The idea is to breathe, if you're breathing properly, which I learned most people don't do, and I learned that from Dr. Hopkins. Most people don't do it. You were born breathing properly. If you look at a baby, when the baby breathes in, the stomach goes out. When the baby breathes out, the stomach goes in, and that's what's supposed to happen. It's supposed to be, rather than the chest moving in and out, which is what we do. You ought to be able to put your, what it says, take your hand and put it on your chest, and put your other hand on your stomach, and as you breathe in, the diaphragm will come up, the chest will stay where it is, but the stomach will go in, because you're bringing the diaphragm up, or bringing the diaphragm down, I'm sorry. I got it backwards. As you breathe in, your belly goes out, okay, because the diaphragm goes down, it's pushing those down, and it's allowing more air to come into your lungs. And as you breathe out, it's the other way, okay? You want to just, but your chest would not move. That's the ultimate goal to this whole thing. So if you just take your hands and put one hand on your chest, if you do that now, you just take a minute, put a hand on your chest, put the other hand on your stomach, okay, on your own chest and your own stomach, all right, and then as you breathe in, you're trying to fill your lungs. So in order for that to happen, the diaphragm needs to go down, which means that your stomach should go out, so that it can go. It got room to go have all that happen. All right. Try. Put your hands on your chest. Put your hand in your stomach and breathe. And your chest, don't let your chest move. Your stomach will go in and out. And that's all that's supposed to happen. The chest will stay in the same place. You know, if you're taking a deep breath, the worst thing you can do to try to take a deep breath is what a lot of people do. So you'll see somebody says, take a deep breath. Well, it's exactly the wrong thing to do. It's exactly the opposite thing of what you want to do. Because what you're doing is you're getting the diaphragm to go the wrong way, and you're squishing the lungs up with the diaphragm instead of opening the space to allow the lungs to fill. And the more breath you can take in, the better projection you'll have, and the better. If you're looking for loudness, you've got a whole lot better chance for loudness with a lot more breath. Air moving over the vocal cords is what causes more air is louder, and less air is lower in volume. Okay, so just get this so you can read through this. This area in the handout on breathing. Give it a try in the privacy of your own home, and breathing properly is something you can do in the car on the way to work. If you take a train, you can sit there and practice breathing properly. I know it's not the sort of thing a lot of people do in the train or the bus or the car on the way to work, but there is a place you can do it. So, and then now that you've got the right amount of breath, you've got the right amount of air coming in, you want to be able to control it and hang on to it as much as possible. And we go into under breath control. There are some things you can do as it says, the three categories there: strengthen the diaphragm. Inhale through your nose, breathing as deeply and fully as you possibly can, taking as much air in that way. Because with air coming in through your nose, the passage is restricted to get into your windpipe and down into your lungs more than it is coming through your mouth. So if you want to work on getting more air in, breathe through your nose. Let's see, on sustaining breath, breathe through your nose, hold it as deeply and long as you can. Or breathe through your mouth and hold it as deeply as fully as you can. Because if you do that, then you'll be able to control what you do with that breath. Once you get it in there, you can let it out a little at a time or more at a time. Resonance is the same thing. Breathe through your nose, then humming. Humming is a real good way to see where your lips and tongue and mouth all work together. You can hum an M, and of course when you say M, that's a consonant, and you're using your mouth and your tongue and your lips differently. M, it comes through, so you're humming that M. It just gets your face working and loosened up. The N is the same way. As you say, for instance, like it says here in wonderful. Wonderful. You see where your tongue goes. It goes into a different place. And the sound is going to be a little bit different. NG is another one to hum. Like, and as it says here, usually in the word hung or hang. You go, We already talked a little bit about using the tape recorder. And don't worry if your recorded voice doesn't sound the same as your spoken voice. You hear yourself on a tape or a recording and you say, that's not me. Who is that person on that tape recorder or that recording? It's because when you hear yourself from the inside your head. When other people hear you, they're hearing your voice as it comes out. Your hearing internally is mostly done inside your head, so it's going to be two different in the cavities in the head. It's going to be a different kind of a sound. So don't worry about it. If you say that, you sure that's me on that tape? Yeah, it's you. It's just. Have you ever had a hearing test? One of the things they do during a hearing test is they test your ears, and they also test your hearing through the bone in the back of your head. They put a little device right on your head instead of in your ear to see how well you hear from inside your head in those cavities there. And we always talk about using the microphone properly. I think Tim and Paul are going to get into that themselves. Hold it in the right place. That's basically what it boils down to. Hold it in the right place. Commanding, the command component of your voice, that's mostly comes in my mind, that mostly comes with projection. If you, like I said before, Johnny or Johnny doesn't have the same effect, They may still not listen to you or still not come in or stop doing what you want them to do. May you have to say Johnny or Johnny again, but at least you've got a better chance if you're projecting. As with square dance calls, you have a better chance of getting people to understand you is if you project. If you say square through instead of square through, it doesn't have the same, to me, it doesn't have the same kind of effect. It doesn't have the same sound, and it doesn't have the same effect. So you need to be commanding. And of course, that comes in big bold type at the end of this thing. It says the underlying principle to know your material, which is a whole separate subject. Be good to your voice. Using it properly, you'll do it. It'll be fine for you. But use it improperly, and it's going to be your worst enemy. And believe me, there have been a lot of horror stories that people have had about using their voice improperly. And one of the things you can do to make sure you get yourself loosened up is the lip buzz. I know Dr. Hopkins talked about that. Anybody have been through one of Dr. Hopkins' seminars on the lip buzz? Just gets your mouth moving, and it gets air flowing, and just keep air flowing. Open your mouth, allow breathing in properly, and allow breath to come out, and believe it or not, what he used to always say, and what it says in here too, and in the other materials we've looked at, breathing and breathing air over and out of past your vocal cords lubricates them and keeps them healthy, rather than having them dried out and rubbing against each other and developing polyps. Do you have any other questions? There's lots of stuff in the material here. Please read over it and understand it. If you have any questions, I don't know if it got on here, but my phone number and email address is at the end. If it's not on yours, just let me know. If you have a question, you want to email correspondence or anything, let me know. Okay? That's it for now, and here's Tim back again.
Thanks, Ron. Appreciate that. Let's give Ron a nice hand. Paul, tell us a little bit about the mechanics. He did the mechanics. You're doing the maintenance. Thanks.
All right, let's have everybody stand up. We're going to do some things right here, and we'll kind of give you an idea about what's going on with your voice and how you can know that you've got the right situation. If you can, just try to get it along the side of the wall, and I want you to put your back against the wall. Put your back against the wall and your feet against the back of the wall, too, all the way against the back of the wall. Now, we've got some edges here that you're going to have to kind of watch. But you need to learn that when you talk, when you call, you need to have your back all the way back against the wall, and your head should be back against the wall, too. And if those of you that have been in the service, we call this bracing. With that head down, and you need to have your head down from here. So what you should have your head over your shoulders, over your hips, over your feet, and then choose a foot, either the right foot or the left foot, and put it forward. That should be your stance when you learn how to call. Microphone he's talking about should be out to here. So just take your hand and with a pencil or whatever and kind of put it out to here and your back straight and have it should be back there against the wall. Now, we're going to do what they call sighing, and I want you to sigh with me. And this is the idea for this, is when you're driving down the wall, when you're driving down the street and you're going to call at a dance, you need to be practicing. When you go to the gym, do you just stand there and look at the equipment? Tom does, okay. Tom does. Don't you go in there and you pick up some equipment and you don't just start out doing 150 pounds or whatever you lift. You start doing small exercises and you get warmed up. Well, what do you think this is here? It's a muscle. Boys, your voice box is only as big. See where my finger is bent and the end from that to the end of your fingernail? That's the boy. That's the men's voice box. Girls, your voice box is the end of this little pinky here. That's all. And through this air passing through here becomes your voice. If you don't have a stance to work it from, guess what? You're not going to have the voice to go from. So when you're going down the street, what I want you to start doing is doing some of these things that I'm going to be showing you right there for maintenance. First of all, let's work on a sigh. Let's start out with a sigh. And I want you to go, ah, ah. Now, go a step higher. Ah. A step higher. Step down. Step down. Step down. Real high. Okay, there's what a sigh. This is what you need to start doing as you're driving down the street. Can't you just see it right now as the policeman comes by and looks over in your car and says, I told you he's on drugs. Look at that. We've got to stop him right now. You've got to start learning how these things go and start using your voice. Now, we talked about a hum earlier. We're going to try some hums. Go lower. A little lower. A little lower. After a while, you're going to feel like you've got a little gargling or gravel in there. So you need to walk this off. So let's start low again. A little higher. Watch your back. Hold it back. All right, try some lip buzzes. Now, let's put some voice into it. Start low. Let's put all these together. Start the sigh and the hum and the buzz. Ready? Sigh. All right, back to the hum. Okay, so now you've got in your command, you've got a buzz, you've got a sigh, you've got a what? A hum. You learned how to hold your back and kind of be able to posture yourself. Okay, any questions about this? What's it doing for you? All right, now your projection. I want you to do this, and I want you to listen and what your voice is doing. You've got to listen closely. When we watch most people sing, and we're speaking about caller schools, we sing, or we tell the fellow or the lady, sing a high note. And what do most people do, and you're not against the wall? High note. Voice goes up, and you go, ah, right? As opposed to holding your voice here, or your head here, and letting your voice come out. Now, I want you to sing this note with me, and then I want you to tilt your head back and tilt your head down, and listen to what your voice is doing for you. Ready? Hear the difference? What's the reason why we want to show you this? You've got to learn not to do your high notes here, but do your high notes here with this diaphragm working for you. The air has got to come up and go out, and your projection and what you put out in the marketplace is what comes from here with his head straight on and your back against the wall, okay? So you've really got your projection like this, okay? So when you go home and your wife says, what are you doing with your back against the wall like that at all? You can say, honey, I'm practicing. And let her be a person to tell you what you are not doing correctly. And don't be scared to have her tell you some things. Let's look at another one here. This is called the Shah. And I want you to start low with me. Shah. Shah. A little higher. Shah. A little higher. Shah, a little higher. Shah, a little higher. Shah, a little low. Shah, 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 Shah. Another one that you can work with here is the Shah. So you got a buzz, you got a Shah, you got a hum. What else do you need? Square dance call. Okay, these are kind of some maintenance things, and you have to learn. Glide back and forth between these so you can kind of pitch yourself and get some sort of an idea about what's going on. Okay, before we sit you back down, any questions about Against the Wall, what we're doing, what we're trying to get you started with, and some of the vocal exercises which you can work with? Ron's giving you the mechanics. We're trying to show you here now how to put some of these things into practice so that you feel and you know vocally what to do with your voice. Now, what happens, I'll get to them in just a minute. What happens with your voice when the voice, and you don't have a correctness coming out of your voice? Generally, it's a hearing problem. A hearing problem. How can we correct the hearing problem? Well, the hearing need, let's say you're in a caller school, and all of a sudden this person is walking up to the microphone and he's trying to, or she could be, is trying to come up with something for a singing call. And you know the pitch is not correct as the way it needs to be. And it could be, like we talked about here, a hearing problem. You've got to determine, you've got to listen, and it maybe sometimes be for your own, notice yourself. Do you hear better out of the right ear than you do out of the left ear? If this is the case, then let your microphone and your speaker work for you. If you know your left ear is better, put your speaker here so that you can hear it coming out of the speaker. You follow me? If your right ear is better, put your speaker over to here and hear out of the speaker from this side. Let the equipment work for you. Question?
You can repeat it for the mic. How loud?
Hold it. We got a microphone. We got something going up here.
Rich Reel from California. How loud should we be humming and ahhing and sighing and all that?
Start low, because if your voice is like most people, you need to start practicing with a low voice and then build yourself up. Don't start out like if you exercise in the gym, you definitely don't go in there and start running around with something. Question back here.
What I was wondering is why some of the callers have the speaker so far away from them that you should be able to hear the music. If you can't hear the music that well, you really can't sing that well with it. I mean, it should be in a position where that you should be able to hear the music well.
Equipment here, this is not really an equipment class, but if you notice here in the front, we've got the speaker here in front of the table. It's a good place to have it is to hear or have it up here on the top of the table. I suggest that you never put it back past the edge of the table, because the sound's going to try to come out, hit the table, and do a bounce. Okay? You're going to have rooms out there, too, that you're trying to add your vocal to it, and then you're going to have a problem. But this speaker should be out in front, and wherever you are, be close to that. Problem, of course, is going to be your whistling with the microphone, but you need to be sure, again, your voice is a hearing. If you got bad hearing, you could have a bad voice. Bill?
Bill Boyd, Altamont Springs, Florida. To help answer his question, sometimes if you have a hall that's wide apart, you have to put your speakers far apart for projection. The answer to that is a small monitor speaker that's sitting right in front of you, aiming at you, you can hear your music from the monitor speaker. Almost all the Hiltons or MA150s or whatever have enough places to hook that up where you can put a speaker right in front of you. And if you ever watch a live band, they either have headphones in where they get the direct feedback, and they still have monitor speakers right in front of them.
Good question. Any other questions? Drew. We're on tape.
Yeah. KOG in Spring, Texas. How long do you want to do these exercises?
How long exercises? I would suggest at least 20 minutes if you're going and coming, okay? It's to your advantage. It really is. You don't go in there and just do nothing in the gym. You walk around. You get yourself acclimated. You know, if you go to walk on the track, whatever the case would be, you've got to spend some time in doing what you're doing, okay? Sure.
One thing that I just want to add is that maybe you don't have a dance that night. You still need to exercise. And one of these things with all of these exercises that Paul's just mentioned, you can increase your range by doing these exercises. And if you're wondering, hey, I'm not having capability of getting to the low notes, or I'm not capable of hitting some higher notes, you will increase your range by doing these exercises and working it up until you get past that point where the sound sounds good when you hum.
Now, that from your head situation, too, I suggest that you do this. Listen to your neck. Is it cracking a little bit? Same thing. You're trying to exercise it to get a little bit of exercise for your neck situation, okay? Little tricks that all we're trying to do is just give you a chance to get something in your vocabulary for information.
Gary Smith, Whitecourt, Alberta. So the suggestions that you had was for up and down for voice, and he had some exercises or suggestions for enunciation. Like what would your drills be? I heard your drills.
Drills for enunciation under where are we here? It's over here. Oh, I'm sorry. Right on the first page, under calling, one thing you can do is make the sounds. The suggestion is to make the sounds b, bay, ba, bo, boo, ti, tay, and also add to that square dance calls: right, left, square, var, star, and record them. Listen to yourself. And one of the things it asks you to do here in the handout. In the material I compiled all this from, was after you say them forward, also say them backwards. So you say eb and yab and hob and oe, eob and oob, so that you can, no matter which way you say it, it's understandable. And especially when you get into things like square dance words themselves, right, left. I think it's kind of a cutesy thing to do every now and then. Everybody do a roll through, but not as a regular habit, because especially when you're teaching, because people don't know that it's a cutesy thing to say, a rotten left through. They go, what's that? But if you say right, you got a whole lot better chance of having people understand what it is you're saying. You're being clear, you're projecting the word, and you can get it out there. You could do those kind of exercises to yourself, and again, you could do them with yourself, you could do them with another person in the car, or at home, or wherever you may be. And just maybe you in a tape recorder, or you in a little pocket digital recorder. Yeah.
One more I can give you too. You're talking about this. It would be the vowel sounds. A, E, I, O, U, or ooh. In the South, you got to understand we talk with a drawl. And if you can't hear our explanation as we say something, then I guess you missed my accent. But that's our biggest problem, is we don't open our mouth always. And I'm using this in a general way. And you've got to learn, like you said earlier, Exercise your voice and when you talk so that you understand. Now, you heard the T's and the D's mentioned earlier. He's talking about if you've been to any music training, you'll know your music instructor will always say you take your T's and your D's and you put it to the end of your word. So if you're going to say right and left through, you would say right to left through. Hear it? Right to left through. So put your T's and your D's at the start of your next word. Go back, you have to look at your wordage, and you have to start putting T's and D's at the end of the words. May you understand what I'm talking about? T's and D's. Okay, anything that sound, put that last letter, right to left, put it over to the next letter, or to the next word. We have a question here first.
One of the first exercises, Skip Brown from Portland, Maine, I'm sorry. One of the first exercises I was given as a new caller in 1976 was to exercise your tongue. It's physically impossible to do this, but if you attempt to take your tongue and touch the tip of your nose, the bottom of your chin, and each cheek 4 or 5 times, it will stretch it, exercise it, and make it very, very easy to articulate your T's, your S's, and your D's, and everything else.
Good. Any other comments before you head back up? All right, if you turn over to the second part of the information, this is the physical things that I know that you can do a lot of reading on your own, but let's point out a couple of things so that you feel a little bit more safe with what we've got listed here. We're speaking about the caller's equipment. And I want to call a couple of thoughts here to you. Number one, we're going to call the first part caller's equipment, and the second will be vocal tips. Now, under the caller's equipment, you've got 2 seasons of the year that you really know things can happen. You're going to have the latter part of the winter season, and you're going to have the colds. You're going to have some problems with the change of temperatures. And then we get into the spring and the summer seasons, and if you live in an area where you have a lot of allergy situations, then you're going to have those problems too. And you can see I've got certain things written down here for the winter season. This sounds funny, but the doctors are going back now and proving under the home health situation that a lot of the old remedies are making sense. My wife doesn't like to see this part about eat lots of onions and garlics because you know that there is an associated smell with that. But they are proving now, even from the cancer situation, that these are the things that do work. You can either buy it in the capsule form or you can use it in terms of the fresh situation. A lot of orange, yellow vegetables. Lots of water. You'll notice here on the stage I've got water, and several others do too. Do not suggest the Cokes, too much of the coffees, too much of the fruit drinks on stage. Water is great. It's a natural occurring thing, and therefore have plenty of water. Take a cup of this up on the stage with you. Those of you that take medicine, I don't care whether it's blood pressure, whether it's heart, whether it's whatever, you're going to get some drying effects, diuretic type situations in your voice and in your tongue. Water is the excellent lubricant for this. Avoid sweets and sugars. Keep humidified. If you're staying in a motel room at night or you're out on the road, take time to turn the shower on, fill your bathtub up with water, have something of a moisture availability. Those of you that live in homes today with air conditioning, you know what the air conditioners are doing. It's dehumidifying. It's taking moisture out of the air. If you don't believe it, walk across the rug and touch somebody. Right? You're going to zap them. And that's just static electricity caused by a lack of moisture in the air. So always keep moisture, if you will. Wintertime, wash your hands before eating. If I walk out this door, I'm touching a doorknob. How many other people have done this that have sneezed into their hand? I'm coming back in that same door. You get the idea? I'm going into the restroom. The same situation goes on. I'm taking something off of the shelf. It could be a glass. Who knows how many people have handled that with unclean hands. So you've got to use a little bit of common sense. Bed rest. I'm sure we all get 8+ hours a day for bed rest. Shake your head, yes, you're smart, right? Chicken soup. Believe it or not, it's coming back. Very beneficial. Vitamins and minerals. How many, by the show of hands, do take vitamins and minerals? Okay. If you've not considered this, and I hope I'm not stepping on feet here and there's any doctors in the crowd, but sometimes your doctors don't have a lot of health knowledge of vitamins and minerals. But if you go see some of these health stores, not that they're trying to sell you a product, but they will give you good advice of things that are available out there in the open market for vitamins and minerals. And you may find certain deficiencies from time to time that needs to be corrected. Of course, this can come about by medical examinations and good blood tests. Vitamin C, throat lozenges, you can see there. Avoid aspirin. Notice the effect it causes to blood vessels. Hot, warm drinks. Try lemon juice. No sugar. No sugar. Lemon juice, no sugar. Something warm and soothing. Hot teas. Green teas if possible. Vocal tips. Let's look over there. Nasal problems can come up from time to time. Sinus problems can come up from time to time. Here in the South, we have a lot of allergies. We have a lot of right now especially, with all of the pollen count, it normally is 200. It's 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 right now. And you don't think that affects your breathing and your singing ability, go ahead and breathe a little bit and then come back in. Look on your car, the yellowness on your cars. You can see it, what's in the air, and you're breathing this. And then trying to digest it and then bring out a voice. Inhaling in steam or boiling water containing bay leaves. We talked about vocal exercises earlier. Throat congestion. Look at the gargling with a teaspoon of salt, vinegar, and very hot water. If you've got a real strong gut, have you ever breathed salt water? It does have a healing action through your nose for drainage. Little tips of the trade here. Vocal exercises again. It's crucial for singers to get plenty of rest and exercise. That's not the thing you want me to say, but exercise is very important. Best to eat a meal 1 to 2 hours before a dance or festival. Why? Anybody? But what's going on in your system? Yeah, the digestion is going on in your system, and so therefore from the blood flow and from the need for oxygen, the body is having to spend some time right here doing other things that's not going to help you. So try to eat a couple hours before you go to the dance. If you eat after the dance, then go the other direction. What's happening to the body? It doesn't have enough nourishment sometimes, and not a pack of soda crackers and a Coke won't get it. Should you drink milk before you go to a dance? Why not? Coats your vocal cords. Coat your vocal cords, and therefore, from a singing standpoint, it's not good for you. Number 3, do or do not drink alcohol. Do not before singing. Smoking, good or bad? Bad. Avoid drinks containing ice. What does ice do to your vocal cords? It shrinks them. So therefore, you don't have the ability. Remember, all a vocal cord is vibrating muscles. And if they're stiff, they don't vibrate as fast. Okay? Anything else that you see there that would be, notice the number 9, avoid using Quercetin D. It's been shown to cause hemorrhaging in the vocal folds. A lot of common sense things here, but you've got to use all this with a grain of salt, and you've got to be smart with what you're doing. Okay, any questions before I turn it over to Tim? Good, here's Tim.
Hey, you didn't give him enough time to think. Wait a second. Let's give Paul a nice hand for all that information, too, on mechanics, on maintenance, rather. If you flip the page then onward, there are some techniques that vocalists use that can be helping or aid in making the voice become more of an instrument. And there's some tricks. And when I started kind of compiling some of this research, it just snowballed, and it went into a whole lot of things. And so there's a lot of information here. Even after reading this, you might put it away and go back and read it again, and you can glean more off of the information that's provided. But we had a group here that came in on Sunday. If you weren't here, they're very good. It was just a vocal band, and they had no instrumentation, and that's the first one, a cappella. And when you're doing a singing call, well, let's just work the patter side of things. If very effective tool is to go ahead and just turn the music off and continue your chant with your patter, and then see if you can turn the music back on. That's a trick, and still be on beat and still be on the rhythm. A lot of people I've heard can turn the music off and they'll continue the chant and then they'll end the tip. But can you turn it back on and still be on rhythm? If you can, you're really good. All right? You really need to try that and practice it before you just do it at a dance. But that's a great technique to use. You can also do it with singing calls. Take the last sequence of a singing call and turn the music off and see if you can stay with the entire rhythm of the particular piece of singing call, what you're doing, and then turn it up where the tag would be. And if you hit the tag, you've really created a wow effect. Can you see how that would work? Okay, and that's the use of how you could use something with a cappella. Accents, a particular note or a syllable or a word having some stress. We do that on particular singing call lines, and you have a song and you wish to highlight that particular word and you're going to accent it. And so that's why that's in there. We sometimes have jokes about putting the accent on the wrong syllable. And you can have fun with that where you put the access and stress. Articulation, we've talked about that. Attack, being able to hit that first note. A lot of times when there's a key change in a singing call record or music, singing call, you'll see or find that a lot of the callers will go, well, Four Ladies Promenade. And oftentimes it's because they don't know where it's going. Well, is there a way to slide to find the note until they hits it? And then you go in and attack the note. But if you don't do that, the more professional way is to know ahead of time where it's going. And when that kicks in, you really attack that first note where you see there's a key change. Four Ladies Promenade, Four Boys Promenade. And you've now attacked that note properly rather than gliding into it or sliding up to find it. And then there it is. Your body language creates some nonverbal messages. And I know people use this as showmanship techniques. They'll lay on the stage, on the floor, and tell you how excited they are. You know, great to be here. I'm really, really jazzed. Thanks for coming. Okay, and that sort of thing. So you can have exaggerated body language opposite of the theme to add some humor element into that particular piece of music. Back phrasing is very interesting. It's not very interesting if you're sharing the microphone with another caller because they have no clue unless they've tested how to be able to back phrase with you. But you as a performer can do some back phrasing where you're singing kind of off the phrase or ahead of the phrase, either in front or behind that particular phrase. Now, some callers do it and they don't even realize they're doing it because they can't find the phrase. So that's a problem. But if you ever listen to Willie Nelson and any of his music, he's doing that all the time. And when I listen to the radio or if I'm listening to Willie Nelson singing a lot of songs, it's cool stuff what he's doing. But you don't hear a lot of people singing along with him. He doesn't do a lot of duets. Okay, and when he does, it's a problem because they need to try to back phrase the same way as he does. You know, the music says, dung, 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 while on the road again. Okay, and he might do a little bit, just can't wait to get on, you know how we chef that? I just can't wait to get on the phrase again. Okay, and so that's a little jazz technique of music. We have a bass tone voice, which is more diaphragmatic and chest voice. That's what the next one is. And later on we'll go into some others. Beatboxing. There was a fella here in that vocal band group that he was a drum. He was a drum machine. And there's some singing calls where you can provide a and you can do that, and that's beatboxing. And it's very popular today, more so than in the past. So that's what that is, beatboxing, making your voice do other instruments and making other sounds. This bel canto technique, I can't even speak. Thank you very much. Canto technique is what it's just saying. It's a pure sound. It's a classical church sound of being able to sing. We don't utilize that a lot in our square dance singing. But there are some people that do. I've heard callers get up there and they sound beautifully as if they're in a church. But in our activity, it's a little annoying to hear, head square through, 4 hands around that ring you go, do, si, do, that girl go. You know, and it's a technique where you're singing almost too perfect, if you will. But it is a church-like performance, very classical performance. And there's times where you can have that reverent manner to sing. And then there's a time where you really need to be singing more what the emphasis of the call or the dance is, whatever that theme of the dance. Belting is coming common word. Right now the word for belting is changed to having an edge to your tone. It's almost too loud, and you're really overemphasizing and belting things. And we've had callers who called that way, which are in a way almost yelling at the dancers. And a whole night of that, or just a whole tip of that for a matter, is just too much. And so you have to be careful and not to overdo that. We show another word, blend, being able to have sound like in a unison or to have some blending tones between 2 or 3 different callers when they sing. We have breath support. That's pretty self-explanatory there. A catch breath is a quick breath that you have to take when you need it. And on occasion, there's some singing calls where there's lots of words to it. And somewhere in there, you have to catch that breath. There's a comma, but they keep going. And so a catch breath is a quick that you have to take. And sometimes it's just from the mouth, just something there. And you don't want it to be audible because that'll deter too. But it is a quick breath that you have to take. A lot of times people use chase vocals. That means if I say 4 ladies promenade and somebody else will come right back and say ladies promenade inside the ring and head square through in the middle and you go. And it's kind of called chase vocals. They're very effective. Consonants is being able to where things sound good. There's counter melodies. You have a normal melody line, and then there's something else that could be a melody in the background that would play along with it. If one person is singing sweet country music, or When the Saints Go Marching In, somebody could be singing down by the riverside, instead of singing the regular melody. And when they put those two together, they just sound unique and have a unique. So counter melodies are very useful. Cracking of the sound happens a lot of times, mostly if you haven't warmed up enough. But you can use that as a technique, and some can. But I wouldn't recommend it. But it is where you get to that point where you start to sing and you lose that little bit of support, and it sort of flips into your falsetto or backs away. That's a problem. You should have control over that. Crescendo, having a way to where at the end it's going to really sound nice and with full sound at the end of something. Most singing calls, you don't want to start with full crescendo at the start, because where do you go? If you're at the ceiling when you start, you got to have it go somewhere. And so a lot of people will start their singing calls rather in a more talking tone or voice, and then they'll get excited. And then at the last sequence through, they're really charged up, and there's the crescendo. Dialect is sounding like somebody, is having some theme to provide some authenticity. Diaphragmatic breathing is one of these things. That's another term. Diction we talked about. Diphthongs, that's a cool one. This is where you have a word that has more than one vowel in it. And mostly we stretch the first vowel, or we emphasize that first vowel. So the word night, it sounds like it's a double vowel, but we hold that and we sort of quickly go into the last word, the last consonant of night. So those are diphthongs, are kind of interesting. And there's in some singing calls. I mean, you can pick them out and say, oh, I want to emphasize that. I want to stress that. Descriptive words, emphasis words, knowing some emotional level of excitement, louder, higher stage of excitement. I'm going through here. Edge, emotional expression. Again, knowing some mood of the song, something for dramatic for the voice. A fade is something that's kind of unique in singing calls or patter records. You want to be heard, but let's say you have a particular word and you wish to fade it out. And you want them to listen. You wish to fade it out. It's more in the singing side of things. So when you might use that technique when you're singing and then you want to fade it out and just want to let it go away to a spot where they can't hear it. Falsetto is this thing where you're going to go and flip your voice into your head voice, and it is this sound that like the upper part or scale of a yodel. And you can actually increase your falsetto range too. These techniques that the guys were talking about to work your hums and lip buzzes and things, you can actually do exercises for your falsetto. And you know that I'm going in a and that's a falsetto tone for me. It's definitely up here in my head, up here in my face, and it's a and I'm relaxing it down, and I can do it up. And you hear where it cracked a little? Well, the more I practice that, I can get rid of that crack. And the more I work on it, I can get higher. And you'll see that you can actually increase the range of your falsetto. The real trick is to find where that cracking, where the flipping occurs in your high range and then into your falsetto. Because sometimes there's this thing where if you can make it sound seamless, then you've really totally exercised your vocal folds to where they can work a full range. There's singers that have as much as 5 octaves. Celine Dion, and it has a wide range. There's also another pop singer. The name's name's not come to my head right now. But it is documented where she has a 5. Mariah Carey has a 5-range octave vocal range. And most folks are good to get 1 octave, okay? And I feel comfortable in about an octave and a half, maybe 2 at the most, okay? A couple of octaves. But most folks are not have that typical range. But it takes some work to find it, to work it. Harmony is an interesting thing. There was an entire session on a harmony earlier, and the way that you make that happen. Improvisation. Improvisation. Thank you very much, Rich. Yeah. So that's creating things on the spot. Now we have choreography that we do, and it's very difficult to improv choreo. But let's say you've forgotten the words to those taglines, and you have to start making something up. Just kind of, sometimes it might be, and it's a humorous thing if you go, I really know there's more lyrics here if I could only remember them, and then go back into the figures. And the dancers might catch that and go, what did he just say? And so there's some techniques for showmanship with those things. Legato is a term that means having a melody very smooth, going from one note to the other. Head square through in the middle, and you get 4 hands around. To the corner, lady, do, side, do, go now. And that's a really smooth thing, as opposed to staccato, which is further in here later, where you're actually attacking all the different words and syllables. Melody, modulation. Onomatopoeia is kind of fun. We use that as a form of sounding like the words. Bang! Pop. Using your word. Pop. Pop. And I extra emphasize that last consonant, so it would sound like a pop. Bang. Shoot. Shoot the star. Okay, and there's ways you can play with some of the words that are in the things. Frogs croak, ducks quack, sounding like the animal. These are little gimmicks or games, not saying you have to do all of that, but pick one or two of these and make some fun with how you're delivering it. Projection, being able to sing to the back of the room. A lack of projection is going to sometimes convey a lack of confidence. You know, if I was up here just kind of, one of the things we want to talk about is vocal techniques. And I'm sort of talking to myself, and I don't have a lot of confidence in the way we're saying and delivering it. Rapping is a vocal chant, a rhythmic chant. You hear that more in pop music today. And even sometimes you'll hear a melody, and then they'll contrast that with a rap. Somebody rapping, and then go back to a melody again. And that's getting more common in pop music. And we have some singing calls where rap is fun, where you can put it, you can add these little rap phrases into it. Raunchy is a technique that's making your sounds, your voice have a little growl to it, like, since my baby left me, I have no place to go. Okay? And what's really happening behind the green door? I don't know what they're doing, but they're laughing a lot behind the green door. So I had a little raunch in that. So you have to be careful how you get that or use that technique. Some of it can be guttural, some of it can be screams, but it is definitely a form of excitement. You don't want to overdo it either, because you'll hurt you. You can have some problems with your vocal cords. Resonance. Having a full sound. We talked about that. Retard is where you're going to take the phrase and slow it down at the end. There are some singing calls where that's effective. You could take the last bit of it and just kind of take the tagline, and instead of swinger and sing it twice, you could actually just kind of hold that note and make it slow. Instead of the quick chopped up 2/4 tempo, you could sing it 4/4 rhythmic and kind of drag that out, and it's a very effective tool. Runs are notes that are sung very rapidly, and we sometimes refer to that also in musical instrument as licks, or listen to that riff that somebody just did, and they have a certain way of playing that's really enhance it. So use of runs and things are good. Scat is making your voice sound like some musical instrument. I can do the bebops, and there's our singing calls that are very useful, where you can put some scat in instead of lyrics, and play with that in showmanship terms too. I Found a New Baby is one of those. Alamana left and weave, and you can start into this. Well, the beat da 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 ba doo 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 ba ba doo da doo ba 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 doo baby, she's driving me crazy, or however way. But you can add some scat into that. That can be fun, and so check your singing calls, and maybe you have some jazz singing calls. I'm one that says that every piece of music has a purpose. Find the purpose, try to emphasize what that purpose is, and see if you can vocally enhance that in some way with some of these techniques. Syllabants is a way of saying things with lots of extra S's and consonants and sounds that really are overemphasized. And sometimes it happens because people are singing in a certain way, or they have this tonality of their mouth and has to be fixed. But you can do it as an effective tool. All I want for Christmas is my 2 front teeth, my 2 front teeth, my 2 front teeth. And you can have games with that. You know what? And I've heard Wade Driver say this a lot, is that sometimes silence is an effective tool too. When not to sing and just let the music play. And you say, wow, that is great. What did you do? Nothing. You just shut up. Let it do it. I'm not going to sing any better than that particular drum riff or anything that's a good or great piece of music anyway. So don't sing something on top of all that great music. Sigh. If the word is sigh or you want to have something in it, use the word sigh. Or cry. You want to sound like you're crying. I don't want to cry. You hear that little break in the little crack in the voice? That's sounding like I'm almost crying up here. A sigh is the same thing. Dropping, a slide, sliding down or sliding up into a note. So a lot of country music, slide. The singers slide into their notes. And you hear them saying, on the road again. He slid up, on the road again. I can't just wait to get on the road again. And there's a lot of sliding and dipping that occurs in country western music and blues. Staccato we talked about. A straight line sound is pretty unique. The best way I can do is try to give it to you this way. Ha, ha, and I'm singing a note that's coming from the chest and it's going out there and it's not reverberating or resonating in my cavities at all. I am projecting it to the back of the room, a straight line sound. Ha! As opposed to a full resonating sound, which is going to have some roundness to it. It's going to sound like this. Ha! Did you hear the difference in that? There's this roundness thing that I've got resonating in my head. I've projected it out, and then I leave it out there to kind of float away. And so there's a difference in rounding a full, robust sound as opposed to just a straight sound. And when we're singing patter, a lot of times we forget that we need to have some roundness in our delivery, in the sound of that, not just blurting out calls. So take a look at that. Suspending notes, holding a note, and letting it float out there. That's another harmony or harmonic technique. And there's some reasons or ways of being able to make that happen. And a lot of times you'll hear somebody that's going to sing a note, I harmonize to it, but my nice consonant harmony sound that I'm going to deliver isn't going to be quite there. I'm going to suspend the note a little higher and then drop it down to it. And so if Paul were to sing a note, just any note, and I'll try to harmonize to it. So the harmony note would be up here, and I'm going to go. So sing your note. And I suspended it to get to that point, to get to that word. So that's a style or a technique. Style talks about a manner of speaking. Talking. Oh my gosh, there were some great talkers. Bill Anderson talked and whispered, you know. And that's one person that did that. George Jones did that on a few songs, and there was also Conway Twitty. He started off The Rose, where he talked. Some say love. It is a river, and it drowned the tender reeds. But I say love is like a hunger. And then he starts singing the song as he goes into it. Some say love. And so you can use that as a technique to talk some things in. Having theme. We talked about timbre. Tone quality I've talked about. Trebly voice. You have to be careful how you sound in the room, what sort of tonalities of what you're using. I can have a bass tone, and I can have a trebly tone. And you have to know, if you're a female, how to adjust the tonalities of your turntables and things, or your amps, so that you don't come across very harsh. Even a tenor singer, and myself, a tenor style singer, will have to also be careful and pull some of that off as well. Okay? And yet, it's a technique. If you have a real bad sounding room or difficult room to sound, you can add some treble and just be careful not to overdo it, but the sound, the calls will be heard audibly better than if you were to muddy them with more bass tonalities. Okay, so just be careful of that. Trembling voices or tremble voice, you putting the placement of your sound through your cheekbones, in your face, and kind of having, there's ways of dealing it and working that register, what its placement, and how do you make that sound, making that treble sound voice. There's tremolos and there's vibratos, and they're very similar in the terminology and what they mean. You have a single note that you can hold, or you can sing a song, and it's like, and I can't help falling in love with you. And being able to, where to add the vibrato or where to add tremolo, which might be just shaking one note, or very able to hold a whole sentence and singing with vibrato. Again, too much of it is not a good thing. It's like overusing the foot pedals that they used to do with the digital delays or the chorus boxes that people would overuse. Don't want to overuse it, but there's places where it's real pretty to hear. Vocal delay. This is kind of waiting before you deliver something, before you sing, is another thing. A vocal drop, dropping the pitch. Vocal effects. And you can add some effects in your voice, or sound like dogs, and or whatever. That might be a vocal effect, if it's useful for that particular singing call. Vocal fry is more of a warm-up. It's that guttural sound. But oddly enough, there was a lot of country western singers that sang that way. You know, some said love. And Conway Twitty was one that had a low register. Mask, vocal register, we talked about that. Shading, degrees of volume on it. Whisper is a fun one. You know, and when you whisper, you get people to listen. And sometimes it can be sexy or not, but it's the idea of that. Whistling is just another vocal effect, but making things sound like that, but you whistle on the dock of the bay. But be careful not to go right into the mic, because then it can hurt. So you can whistle and do things that sound effective. Wobble is a shake if you lose control, if you lose some stability in your voice. Yodeling occurs. You can yodel. And again, that's being able to know how to control, how to flip into your tonal voices, into your falsettos and backs. These are just the tip of the iceberg of some vocal effects that you can utilize for your instrument, which is the voice. Okay? We have covered a ton of information, and you have a brochure that has a lot of information in it. If you have questions, comments, or anything like that, see us after this break or something, and we'll be glad to help you with it. All right? Thanks for your time. We appreciate it. And let's thank the panel up front here for their time. And if you've enjoyed the session, please put it on your critique sheet. And if you've enjoyed it and you want to hear it repeated, put some information and feedback for the folks to be able to read that input. Okay? Thank you.